All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Color Codes 101 webinar today. To get a better idea of who you are and why you're all here, we have a quick poll for you. So please take a minute to answer these questions. And while you're all answering the poll, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jordan Hanna, and I've been with Ozobot for about a year now, and I'm a curriculum developer. So I love creating content for teachers like you to bring Ozobot and coding into your classroom. I have a master's in elementary education and teaching, and before coming to Ozobot, I was a kindergarten teacher. I'm so excited to be here with you all today and teach you about color codes. All right, we'll give about 20 more seconds to answer the poll questions. Okay, so we have a lot of elementary friends here, a few middle school, and just a few high school. Most of you are elementary classroom teachers or STEAM and STEM specialists, a few librarians, and definitely a mix of experience using color codes before. Some of you use it all the time, some of you have never used them before. Either way, this webinar is perfect place for you to start. We will be going over everything color codes related. And with that, we'll get started. All right, so I'm just going to review what we're going to cover today. We will first start off with what are color codes, how to color code. Then I'm going to share with you our Ozobot basic training to get you and your students ready to color code in the classroom. Then I'll be sharing some of the best tips from the EDU team. And lastly, some examples of how you can integrate color codes into your classroom. And so the purpose of today's webinar is to offer you a comprehensive introduction to color codes. We really want to make sure that you leave knowing how to teach them to your students. And whether you've just received a brand new set of Ozobots or you're actually just looking to deepen your understanding of coding, this webinar will provide you with key information to understand color codes. So what are color codes? In today's digital world, I think it's really exciting to offer students a screen-free approach to coding. And our color codes does just that. Your students will become engineers. And what I mean by that is we will engage them in the engineering design cycle of identifying a problem, ideating around it, and finding various solutions, then making those ideas come to life and iterating them. Your students will learn coding concepts such as sequencing, algorithmic thinking, iterating, and troubleshooting. They will learn these skills by programming the robot's actions and controlling their movement. They'll also gain a deeper understanding of the hardware, so exploring Ozobot's sensors and understanding how the robot can detect and respond to these codes. And they'll get a foundational understanding of coding. So we think this hands-on approach really builds a strong foundation in core coding concepts before they move on to something more advanced, such as Ozobot Blockly. And all of our lessons meet CSTA and ISTE standards. So this is your color codes chart. This is your guide to all of the pre-programmed codes that your Ozobot can read. So a color code is a short sequence of 2 to 4 colors, and the colors that make up a color code are green, blue, red, and black. Based on these inputs, your Ozobot will respond with a pre-programmed action. which we'll review in just a minute. But you can go ahead and take a scan of some of the different color codes that you can choose from when programming with your Ozobot. Before diving deeper into that, I want to explain how Ozobot actually reads the codes. And this is something really important and cool to also teach to your students. On the bottom of Ozobot, you can find the optical sensors that detect color and line width. So if you flip Evo upside down, I have mine right here, you can see the sensors that light up, and there's a long row of 7 sensors. These are the line following sensors, and they allow the bot to see and follow a line. And then in the middle, you'll notice another sensor, which is the color sensor. So this helps Ozobot detect different colors. Again, really cool component to explain to your students so they know how the bot actually works. Here is a video of what one of the color codes look like. I'll play it again. Ozobot reads the 4 colors in this code and immediately enables the action of tornado. All right, so back to our color codes chart. I'm going to review some of the color codes on this list. And these ones are the ones we recommend teaching your students first if they are just starting out with Ozobots. We'll start at the top here where you see the 6 speed codes. From left to right, they'll increase in speed. And when Ozobot moves over the speed code, you will see a change in velocity. Something to note is that the short super slow, which is at this end, and the nitro boost at the other end, these are speed codes that give a 3-second dose of that speed. And then it's going to return to the default speed. So for example, if it's moving at a cruise and it runs over the nitro boost, it's going to give you a 3-second dose of its fastest speed, then return to the cruise speed. While the remaining speed codes, slow, cruise, fast, and turbo, those will change the default direction or default speed. We'll hop down to the direction and special move section, and I want to point out these 3 first color codes: left at intersection, straight at intersection, and right at intersection. These codes tell Ozobot where to go when it runs into an intersection. If there isn't a code telling it which way to go, your bot will make a random choice. If you hop down to the next row, you'll see the 2 codes for a U-turn. The first one can be placed in the middle of a line, and the second one can actually be placed on a line end, which is just the end of a track. I'm going to show you an example of these color codes we just went over and how they're used on a track. And these activity sheets are taken from one of the introduction series that I will show you later. And so you can see on track 1, Ozobot will start at the number 1, move down the track, and run into an intersection. Like I said before, if there's no color code telling it which way to go, then it will make a random choice. On track number 2, students learn that they need to program it to go into the direction they want. The goal is to make it to the birdhouse. So they'll be able to look at the color codes key, program a right at intersection, and once it gets up here, your Ozobot will make a right and go to the birdhouse. Over on track 4, you can see some examples of how those 2 different U-turn codes are used, where one is in the middle of the line and the other is at the line end. Then for tracks 5 and 6, you can see additional examples of direction codes where the instructions want your students to take your Ozobot to the dog, so it programs the right at intersection code. And for 6, it wants you to go straight towards the palm trees, so it's a straight at intersection code. Back to our color codes chart, I want to point out the 4 special moves. These are so fun for your kids to use, and we've seen really fun creative ways that students will program using them. You can use tornado, zigzag, spin, and backwalk to perform a cool move. And I want to point out that these color codes will have four colors that program the action. And a few more I'll point out. The pause for 3 seconds will enable your bot to stop moving. Take a pause for 3 seconds, then continue moving. And over here under the win exit category, you'll see one says win exit play again. So it commands your Ozobot to perform a success animation, then continue following lines. Whereas the win exit game over is going to turn your bot off in the way game over means. And so you'll have to turn your bot off and back on to continue line following again. So I know there's a lot of color codes on this chart and we don't have time to review all of them today, but I do want to point out that if you're interested in more of a deep dive on the remaining color codes on this list, we do have a Color Codes 201 webinar taking place tomorrow if you want to join. All right, now we have a brain break. So we are going to solve this activity sheet that is from our Introduction to Color Code series from kindergarten to second grade. There are 3 missing color codes in each track, and your job is to read the clue to figure out which ones to use and where Ozobot needs to go. Then you can look over to the color codes key on the right-hand side and pick from there. We can go over the first one together. The clue says Ozobot goes fast to eat the bag of chips. So the first clue is that Ozobot is moving fast. We'll want to choose the fast color code and put it in the first place. In the second place, we're going to need to tell Ozobot which way to go because it's going to run into an intersection right after that. Do we want Ozobot to go straight or make a right? Well, Ozobot wants to eat the bag of chips, so we need to make it turn right. In that case, I'll use the right at intersection color code. Then this lesson also teaches how to use that win exit play again code, which is found on a line end. So we know that right here for that color code next to the bag of chips, we'll use the win exit play again. In this video, I'll show you what it looks like when you run your Ozobot over this exact activity sheet with the color codes in it. So the first color code programmed it to move faster. You can see the increase in speed. And the second told Ozobot to take a right. And the third programmed a celebration move. So what I'll have you all do now is type into the chat the 3 color codes that should be used for track 2 and for track 3. Awesome. Thanks for all your responses. So I see a lot of correct answers. We will use slow for the first one on number 2, then left at intersection, then the win exit. And for number 3, we will use the nitro boost, which is the fastest speed, and the straight at intersection to the win exit to make it to the ball. Nice job, everyone. All right. That is what the answer key looks like. We do include these answer keys in all of our lessons, and they are really to help you, they're teacher facing, so that you know what the intended end result is for the activity sheet. All right. Another note on those activity sheets, whenever you'll find one that we've created, they will simply be filled out using using our color code markers to fill out the empty squares. But you can also teach your students how to create their own Ozobot tracks. And that is what this next section will focus on and how to follow our guidelines. So the basics to get started is really simple. All you need is a piece of white paper and our color code markers. These are designed specifically for Ozobot programming, and other tools like dry erase markers, color pencils, crayons, or highlighters will not work. We also want you to use white paper, as colored paper can alter the marker's hue, making it really difficult for Ozobot to read the codes accurately. And similar to that, we recommend just sticking to regular paper since Ozobot may struggle to read the color codes on construction paper or glossy photo paper. So just regular paper, color code markers is all you need to get started. The best practices for drawing a line are that the line thickness needs to be around 5 millimeters. This is really important for Ozobot to accurately follow the line. But when you use the chisel tip, which is one end of the Ozobot color code markers, you will actually achieve this exact thickness when drawing. So that's why we really recommend using our markers. When drawing the lines for your Ozobot, you'll also want to leave an inch of white space on the sides of the line and have lines be 1 inch apart from each other. And also just be mindful about the space that Ozobot needs when moving around corners and curves and traveling through intersection. 90 degrees is the ideal amount of space between an intersection for Ozobot. Here are some things we ask that you try to avoid. So making your line too thin or too thick or inconsistent in line thickness. And you can see on the right-hand side a few examples of all the tracks that we want you to stay away from. You can remind your students that Ozobot really likes a 90-degree angle and will follow your directions more accurately that way. And so now that we've gone over how to make the perfect track, this is the information on how to make the perfect color codes. The color code squares need to be about 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters, and they need to be consistent with the black track connecting them. So we don't want the color codes to be a lot smaller or a lot bigger than the track. After each color code, we also want to add 2 inches of black track. So this will allow space for your Ozobot to actually perform the cool move or the action that you just programmed it to do. So if you're adding color codes back to back, that's okay. Just make sure there's enough space in between them. And I did mention this before, but I do want to mention it again, just to add 1 inch of white space on either side of the track. We love to see tracks that teachers and students have created with pictures and words, but it's really important to avoid adding color right up to the line and try to just leave some white space. Reviewing these guidelines with students will really help roadblocks and frustration. So it's a great idea to just review the color codes guide with students as they're first learning how to use Ozobot. Calibration. So calibration is key. This is another really important step in the color coding process. Once you are done color coding, you're ready to run your program, we want you to calibrate your bot. And calibration is actually a process that helps your bot adjust to the current lighting in the room and the surface it's on. It will help improve code and line reading accuracy. And here are the 3 steps that you'll follow to calibrate your bot. It's super easy. You'll draw a black circle on your piece of paper with the color code markers, and we want it to be slightly bigger than the bot. Then you'll hold down the power button for 2 seconds while it's sitting on that black dot. And then you'll see the LED light flash and you can release it. Your bot will rotate to the left, to the right, and then move off the track. I'll show you a video in just a moment what that looks like. And if you've successfully calibrated, there will be a green light blinking on the top. If you see a red light, that means the calibration was not successful and you'll want to just start over. So this is a video of what calibration looks like. I'll play it one more time. The bot moves left, right, and then off the page. And once you're done with that, you're ready to run your program. We really recommend calibrating before each session. So if you're a STEAM teacher or a teacher who's moving from class to class, it's really great to practice having students calibrate at the beginning of each lesson. And it's also good to calibrate when you change surfaces. So if you're running a program up on a desk and then you move down to the floor, you'll just want to calibrate again to make sure it's reading the lines accurately. And then if your Ozobot is not following lines or reading codes as expected, calibration is the first step to troubleshoot. Okay, and I know this is a lot of information, but you can actually find all of these guidelines in our Ozobot Color Codes guide. So I'm going to hop over to ozobot.com to show you where you can find this. You go up to how it works and click on Color Codes. It'll take you to this page where you click on the Color Code Guide PDF. In this PDF, you will find all the information we reviewed today. And it's super helpful to go back and check that you've followed all the guidelines. And there's also explanations of all the color codes as well. Okay. I also want to show you an alternative way to create your own color code tracks with students. So some of you may have heard of color code magnets, but it is our favorite way to teach coding principles to younger students as little as pre-K. And the reason why is because this kit includes a magnetic board and then puzzle pieces, and each of them have a color code already on them. And then the other puzzle pieces have tracks on them. So students can organize their track for Ozobot in a way that's really easy to use and also manipulate if they want to make changes or they need to fix something. And you can see here, it also comes with a wet erase marker so students can continue their track and design something on their own. The next section is about our Ozobot basic training. I'm giving you a lot of information today, but I want to assure you that there are more resources to not only teach yourself this information, but also your students. We offer a basic training series. It's called Introduction to Color Codes, and it features 10 comprehensive lessons that can help both you and your students learn how to use all the color codes. Included in this series is a skills check. So 2 different skills check to make sure that students have learned what the previous lessons have taught. And those are sectioned out by grade level. So there's one for kinder to second grade, one for grades 3 to 5, and one for grades 6 to 12. In just a moment, I'll walk you through where to find these series, but I do just want to point out that our lessons include video component, and this is a really great way to guide you and your students step by step through the lesson, making it really easy to facilitate the activity while learning something new. Here is an example of a video from one of those intro series that I just wanted to show you. So you can see what it looks like when Evo is running along a track that has a lot of color codes. And in this lesson, students are prompted to fill out the color codes by following a story. All right, I'm going to jump into the best tips from the EDU team. Our first set of tips has to do around making your own track. So you can see here on the left, this is a hand-drawn track with almost 20 color codes. And we have really great tips to ensure that all of the codes are read correctly and your bot can move through the track. So before using markers, first have your students sketch out what they want with a pencil, and then they can mark where they want each of their color codes to go. This is a really great practice to teach the importance of iterating when coding. So students will think about the sequence and then they'll need to make changes to improve their program. And it's a lot easier when they can use pencil and just erase their work. We also encourage students to use a ruler to make straight lines or measure the distance required after a color code. It's worth noting that Ozobot can follow a curved and wavy line. So they don't just have to stick to straight lines, but we love using a ruler to get those really straight lines and 90-degree angles. Then, once students are ready to use the markers, have them add the color codes first. This is such a helpful tip because it ensures that there's enough room for the color codes. Then, once they have all their color codes in place, they'll connect their color codes with a black track using a black marker. Okay, fixing mistakes. We understand that sometimes color coding gets a little difficult and everyone slips up with markers now and then. I know I do. And this simple fix is one of our favorite tips to share because it really just helps avoid the frustration of starting over from scratch. And it's a really great alternative to redoing the entire page. So if a student incorrectly fills in a color code, you can cover it up with a white label sticker or this brand, it's called a multi-use label. And they are the perfect size to cover up a color code. Once you put that on the error code, students can just make their new color code and try again. You can find these codes, these labels at Walmart or on Amazon. And again, they cover up the code perfectly. Another important thing for students to think about is directionality. And directionality, you want to think about it as the way Ozobot is moving, the direction Ozobot is moving before it's going to read the code. So I added this image here to explain an example. With the way the bot is moving, it'll read the code blue, black, green, red, and that will command it to perform a zigzag, which is one of those cool special moves. However, if it was moving down the path from the opposite direction, it would read the code in reverse, red, green, black, blue, which signals a different move, which is backwalk. So our key here is to encourage your students to rotate the page and trace the path with their finger that Ozobot is taking to understand which direction it'll be moving. We know that when you're using those direction color codes, telling the bot to either move left or right, this is super helpful tip to do. And we also love encouraging students to rotate the page to help control the marker when they're making straight lines and really finding the angle that works best for their hand, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. But directionality is a really key thing to remember. And our last tip is about the dual tip color code markers. We really recommend using these markers because they are specifically designed for Ozobot with the perfect shades of red, blue, green, and black. And you'll see that one side of the marker features a thick chiseled tip. And so this is great for for drawing the lines and creates the perfect width for it. Whereas the other end is a fine tip and it precisely fills in the color code squares. Plus, an added bonus, the markers are both washable and non-toxic. All right, now another little brain break. I'd like you all to tag in the chat one of our EDU team's best tips that you want to remember and teach your students. Right. Thanks everyone for participating. A lot of good tips to remember. And for our last section of today's webinar, I want to show you all how you can integrate color codes into your classroom tomorrow. We have an amazing resource for all of you called Ozobot Classroom. And it's a library that offers over 900 lessons for grades K through 12. And we designed this to help educators like you teach coding specifically with Ozobot. This is a free platform and it's updated monthly with new and revised lessons that you can easily integrate into your curriculum no matter what you're teaching. 500 of those lessons are actually color codes, so there's plenty of variety to choose from. And we offer content integrated lessons as well. So lessons that focus on language arts, history, math, science, all of those concepts, and they're tailored to grade level as well. And my favorite lessons, we've also created really fun seasonal lessons. I'll show you some of those in just a minute as well. But I really want you to all be sure to create your free account. I will share this link again with you at the end of the webinar so you can sign up right when we finish. It's at classroom.ozobot.com. So with every color code lesson that you'll find on Ozobot Classroom, you will find also an activity sheet with it that has a track for Ozobot. And I love highlighting the incredible activity sheets that our creative team has made. Each of these will provide a really unique and fun application of color codes. And we just want to provide you and your students with top quality content that is really fun for your students. So now I'm going to hop over to Ozobot Classroom and show you what it looks like. Once you have created your free account, this is what you'll see under the Lessons tab. You can search for lessons by grade, subject, you can search for keywords, or any of these filters. So if you want specifically color codes, you would click that. If you specifically want Ozobot to be the author, you can look at our lessons or even the ones our community has made. On this main page, the first section you're going to see is called Featured Lessons. And like I mentioned earlier, we update new lessons every month, and you'll find those here. And right below it is our Introduction to Color Codes section. So if you click on View More, it'll take you to the lesson page with all 14 lessons here. I will open one up just so you can see what it looks like. This lesson has a video like all the intro series. And when you click on full lesson plan, it'll take you to the full lesson plan. We have a summary, we have learning objectives and outcomes. We've included all the materials that you'll need for the activity, any teacher tips that we think will be helpful. Zoom in a little. And then the direct instruction. After the direct instruction, you will find the standards that align with the lesson, and then all the activity sheets. Like I said before, we always include a sample solution that's teacher facing for you to understand what the completed activity should look like. And then at the very end, you will find the activity sheets that you'll print out for your students. Another way to easily just access the activity sheets is with the activity sheets button here. And from there, you can just print all the materials needed for your students. All right, and before we wrap up today, I wanted to show you some really fun lessons for beginners. These are in our library, and these ones allow for your students to just be really creative and experiment with the different color codes. The first lesson on the left, Ozobot Racetrack, students are asked to turn their bot into a race car and try out different speeds around the track, just really getting to test those 6 different speeds, how they work on a track like this. And then the second activity sheet here called Polar Animals, students will take their Ozobot through exploration of polar animals, learning some science standards, and then they can choose any speed or any special move codes that they want in their track. The next step up would be a lesson that requires a little bit of strategy and critical thinking. This is one of my favorite examples of a seasonal lesson, perfect for Halloween coming up, called Zombie Apocalypse. And the activity sheet comes with the win, exit, game over code already filled in. You can see that those are the codes that end up right next to the zombies. So students know if we run into a zombie, it means game over. So how do we avoid the zombies using the direction color code? Your students will fill in 6 different direction codes to avoid the zombie and also collect all the survival supplies. And this lesson really asks students to analyze the track, think about those risks and constraints, and also focus on directionality, which again is the direction the bot is traveling from before it reads the code. And the last example I want to show you is our skater safety lesson. I would say this is beginner to intermediate, and this activity sheet actually uses all the color codes we talked about today. So speed, direction, U-turn, pause. And in this lesson, students are required to fill in 11 color codes to turn their bot into a safe skater in the neighborhood. And this activity sheet's really cool because their bot will just continuously move around the track. All right. That is it for our Color Codes 101 webinar today. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're interested in learning more on color codes, check out our Color Codes 201 webinar tomorrow. That will be at the same time. And I'd also like to mention again to create your free account at classroom.ozobot.com right after you leave, and you'll be able to start finding lesson plans for your class. Thank you, everyone.